Hey, it's Michael Gray back for another edition of The Gray Area, coming off yet another win, this time at home on Monday night in the not blue uniforms. The Lions advanced 5-2 on the season with an impressive win over Tampa Bay, 24-9, and now they get some much-needed R&R as they head into the bye. A lot to get to on this edition of the show. Need to talk about what we learned in this latest victory. Also, numbers over narratives. I like to take a look at the numbers that told the story of the game, at least in my opinion, and that of Detroit Lions PR. Those people doing good work. We'll take a look at what they had to say following up the big win against the Bucs. We need to talk about the fact that comparison is the thief of joy, and how we're all going to need to take a step back before we compare this year's Lions team to last year's Lions team, and why that's both good and bad. Plus, reinforcements are on the way. That's always good news. And we get to take a much-needed breath. The bye week comes at a much better time this year than it did last year, what with the injury situation and the fact that collectively, as a fan base, we could all probably do with a cleansing breath or two. The anxiety of the NFL season is like nothing else in sports, and we've been going through it. I've been going through it. So I know I could use the week off, and we will get into that as well. First, please subscribe to the channel. That's how we get to do what we do. If you subscribe to the channel and then you click the notification bell and then you do all the things that literally every single person on YouTube asks you to do, there's a reason they do it. It's because that's how we get to keep the content free. So please be a part about that. Please. Hey, it's Michael Gray, and welcome to the latest edition of The Gray Area, coming off yet another win, bringing the Lions to 5-2. Big win over the Bucs on Monday night, all there in front of the home crowd and prime time and Joe Buck and the not blue uniforms, and it was a big night in Detroit and an important win in the NFC. Also sets up a nice little bye week. A lot to get to with this edition of the show. We got to talk about what we learned from this week's win. We will get into narratives over numbers. There's also the fact that comparison is indeed the thief of joy. And we may need to take a step back comparing this year's team to last year's team. There are some important differences that can get lost in the sauce, especially when you change coordinators and people get quick to point fingers. Reinforcements are on the way. That's a big thing, especially as we head towards November, December, when the games get more and more important. And that all-important cleansing breath. We can take it as fans. The players can take it. The coaches can take it. Everybody needs a break once in a while. And the bye week comes at a really, really good time. Let's get started on all of that. But first, of course, do the subscription thing. Click the notifications and the thumbsies, upsies, and the things that literally everybody on YouTube asks you to do. There's a reason for that. We're living in this algorithmic world, and that's how we keep the content free. So please be a part of that. Let's get started. What did we learn from this win over the Bucs? I want to start with the fact that the defense can win the 2025 Detroit Lions a football game. And not just any defense, a Legion of Whom defense, a complete secondary of make-believe. Players that the press corps themselves said they could not identify or name after the game, when they should have known their names, like Maulet, Hallett, Yasin, all of those guys that were out there balling. They can win this team a game, and they're going to need to. The Lions are going to need to be multiple. We all saw what happened at the end of last year when they were one-legged and had to rely only on the offense. That'll win you some games in the regular season. It's not going to win the games that matter, and this team can win with defense. That was an incredibly impressive performance that the Lions put on. In fact, it was the most impressive performance against this Tampa Bay offense all the way back to September 22nd, 2024. I can't take credit for that stat, by the way. I have to give credit to whomever it was that shared it in the chat. I just saw it pop up during the Postgame show and then double-checked it, and I'll be damned. They had not been held to single-digit points since early last year. That offense for Tampa Bay is pretty good, and the Lions made them look very pedestrian. Baker Mayfield didn't have a good night. Obviously, they were without some weapons. Nobody in Detroit is going to cry a single tear for a team that's dealing with injuries, but that doesn't make what the defense did look any less impressive. To roll out there with all of those backups, and in some case the backups, and then backups that had bad hamstrings. It was unbelievable defensive performance, and we learned that this defense can show up and take over a game from time to time, and that is going to be hugely important for games where the offense doesn't necessarily have their best stuff. And last night, the Lions didn't. Get into that a little bit more with numbers over narratives. The defense balled out, and they are going to have to at points throughout the season. That was great to see. Another thing that we learned is that Dan Campbell doesn't give a flying damn about how I feel about him kicking field goals in the early part of a game. Man, could you just please take the points? Just go up 10-0. There's nothing wrong with a 10-point lead. It's not a felony. It's not against the rules. Dan Campbell doesn't give a single flying flop about kicking field goals early in the game or from a reasonable distance. I don't know if we're just setting up Jake Bates to be, you're 50 and out. Anything else, we're going. I don't know what the philosophy is. I know that he has one. He's super aggressive. We all love it. But my God, the man's taken years off my life with the going for it on fourth down early in games when you already had a 7-point lead and you can just tack 3 on and be up 2 scores and just take a lead forward with you into the game. It always has to be a little bit of a white knuckle ride, and that's because Dan Campbell doesn't give a damn about early game field goals, and he just confirmed that yet again this week. The Lions are going to have to learn to work with their off-speed stuff from time to time. That is another lesson to be taken from this game, and I'm talking specifically about the offense. There are going to be times when you can't spread the ball all around to 6 or 7 receivers the way that Jared Goff likes to, and you can't lean on Laporta, and you can't take the checkdowns, and you're going to have to rely on Ja Gibbs breaking one big play and Amon-Ra St. Brown breaking one big play being the difference in a game. And those consistent, long 8-9 minute drives that we saw in a game like the one against the Ravens, where the offense just turned into a grindhouse and was operating at peak efficiency in the run game, and all of those things were hitting on all 8 cylinders. That's great. It's not always going to be that way. Todd Bowles gives this offense fits. He did it last year. It's worth mentioning. Tampa Bay is one of the 2 in 15-2. And he has been a nemesis of Goff for some time. Talked about this in the postgame as well. Fact of the matter is, if you have a quarterback and he doesn't have mobility, and let's be honest, Jared Goff, it's not what you would put in the plus category for him. Todd Bowles can make life difficult. The center of that line is not where it was a year ago, and he made life difficult. And the run game did sputter by and large, save for some big plays. And Jameson Williams was not a part of the program, and Sam Laporta didn't see the touches that you're used to seeing, and there just wasn't a lot of love to go around in the offense the way that you're used to seeing when Detroit's hitting on all of their cylinders. And that's okay. They still find a way to get it done because those big splash plays that did come end up being the difference because of lesson number 1, and that is that you can live with a defensive win. You have the ability to win with defense like they did last night. Another lesson, Alim McNeil. Beast. That guy. My goodness. From the first time he got on the field, you saw what that defensive line was missing from the 3 technique and the fact that he could just wreak havoc and penetrate through the middle of the offensive line, collapse the pocket from the middle. They managed to keep Baker contained in much the same way that they did against the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. They ran similar concepts and managed to keep him in the pocket, but the middle of the pocket was coming down around your ears because Alim McNeil is a monster, and having him back in the lineup is just a huge boost for a 4-man front that was playing pretty well. The pressures were there. The Lions were getting home. The sack numbers are solid. But Alim McNeil adds a whole different level of juice to that defensive line. And it was great, great, great to see 54 back in the lineup. Another lesson, Kelvin Shepherd. My God, man. Take a bow. It's not just that it's Eric Hallett and Rock Ya-Sin and Nick Whiteside and Thomas Harper and Arthur Maulet and all of these guys out there doing this it's the fact that you had them all in position. They all believed. They had no doubts out there. Those guys were balling, and it wasn't by accident. It wasn't the the sum is greater than the parts. However, that metaphor, I've never gotten that analogy. At any rate, it wasn't that. These guys were well coached. They were ready to go. They knew what they were doing. And that's an offense that, again, can put up some points and can embarrass you. And yeah, they were missing some weapons. No, I don't feel bad about that. That was an amazing performance from Kelvin Shepherd, the defensive coordinator, to be dealing with all of those guys coming up, basically practice squad and preseason crew, and to have them ready to go, to have them in position to make plays, and then to see them play with the kind of confidence to make those plays, to trust their eyes, to trust their technique, to trust the system, and for them to trust everybody else in there to do their job. Absolutely amazing. The final thing we learned, and this is a personal to the postgame show. If you don't watch it, you can catch the replay on the Twitter machine or on the YouTube and any of those other places. That our chat from the crew that joins us in the postgame is they're better at postgame press conferences than the press is. They've got better questions, and not that you could have worse questions than the ones that most of the locals around the Lions right now are lobbing at the coach and the players. But if you aren't taking part in the post-game show, and you can find it in your heart to do so, right after Lions games, Chris and I jump on and jump in that chat. It's a great deal of fun. At a couple of points during the post-game, I was completely distracted just reading comments as fast as they were coming up while Dan Campbell was struggling to understand what it was he was being asked by the actual credentialed media, who ought to be embarrassed. That brings us to numbers over narratives, the numbers that told the story of the game. And I want to start with one that I already mentioned, and that is the number 9. 9 is the number of points that the Buccaneers scored, and that is their lowest total since September 22nd, 2024. Mentioned all of this before, but it bears repeating. My goodness, the defensive performance that Kelvin Shepherd was able to get out of that ragtag group in the secondary, and Alim McNeil in his very first game back, and all of the carping that so many people were doing about the additional pass rushers that Brad Holmes didn't put on the roster, and they go out and they hold this Buccaneers offense to their lowest performance in over a year. Just an absolutely wonderful showing for Kelvin Shepherd, and such a confidence boost for that defense as they move in now to late October and November, something they didn't get to do last year because the injuries were already piling up and the questions on that side of the ball were everywhere. So you come out now into the second part of your season and your defense feels good about itself and it's going to get a bunch of people back, and you put up a performance like that against one of the, if not the top team in the NFC, and you got to feel good about yourself. Another number, 1. That is the perfect number of perfect fumble punches from Amik Robertson. That's the new peanut punch. I know I mentioned it during the post-game show, but it's true. That punch of his is laser guided. He don't miss. That was a perfect technique. It couldn't have been performed better. It's clearly being coached very well, and he's one of those dudes that's just got a knack for it. He comes in, he's hunting the ball, and he's going to find a way to force fumbles. It's a big part of the story for this defense so far, and he's the biggest part of it. The peanut punch, we got to come out. The Amik's hammer. I don't know. That's a bad moniker for that. Whatever we're going to call it whatever you want. He's awesome at it. The best in the league for my money right now, and he did it again last night. It was awesome. Another number that told the story of the game, this one, not great, 2.7 yards per carry. That's what the Lions did if you take away that giant 78-yard run from Jahd Gibbs. Now, you can't take away the giant 78-yard run from Jahd Gibbs. I understand that. It's no different than when a defensive coach says, well, if we just hadn't given up those 3 big plays, we didn't give up any big plays. Well, you did. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did give up some big plays. And thank God they did. Thank God the Lions forced them into that. And thank God the Lions have the kind of talent to pull that off, where 1 or 2 big plays, 1 or 2 opportunities for their playmakers is enough to win a game. And Josh Gibbs is one of those guys that can get you. He's out there running 22.5 miles an hour. He's one of the fastest guys in the NFL, the fastest running back. I can't imagine there's anybody, if you lined him up, that would be faster than him. He's running away from guys in the secondary. He's got unbelievable talent, and that's the nightmare for defensive coordinators. If you're wondering why he's getting a lion's share of the carries during most of these games so far, that's why. Because he can get loose and do things that nobody else can do, nobody else in the league. Not just nobody else on the team, nobody else in the NFL. Once he gets out there, he gone. But if you take that away and you look at the rest of the run game, going back to the fact that they had to go to their off-speed stuff, the run game wasn't very productive for the Lions. Didn't stop them from trying it, which I applaud. I don't think you want to get away from the run game at any point. If you're Detroit, that would be a huge mistake. It's too much of your identity, and it's too important to how teams have to defend you. But if they're going to get in the lab on something during the bye week, I would think that something would be finding ways to get a more productive, more consistent churn from the run game, because 2.7 is not very many. 0 is less than 2.7, and that is the number of receptions and yards that Jameson Williams had. Now, he had a couple of graphics that he chose to share on Instagram that are being interpreted either as boredom with the bye week in some circles, or disgust and boredom with the output from the game, but 0 for 0, and I'm not going to engage in the more targets for Jameson, we're wasting money thing. I've addressed that in gray areas past. He will have games where he will have fewer catches, and then he will have a game where he's going to bust out for 150 plus, because much like Josh Gibbs, he has rare skill. You put the ball in his hands when you can, and he is eventually going to make something incredible happen. He also probably shouldn't have 0 receptions for 0 yards. As push-offs go, that one was 10 ply, bud. But I'm choosing to stay away from officiating this week because my Twitter feed was so toxic last week. And as we all know as football fans, you're going to have weeks where the zebras work against you, and then you're going to have weeks where the zebras are in your favor, and you just kind of take a shrug, and it's the human element of the game, and it's infuriating. But my goodness, that push-off was weak. I feel like I'm being kind by calling it weak. Another number that tells the game. Tells the future, I think. 0.036. And that is the difference in win percentage between the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. And somehow the Packers, with a tie and a loss, are in first by win percentage. Now, as I tape this, they've already had a bye week, so they haven't played as many games, and none of that matters because they play on Thanksgiving. But I've had too many Packer fans in my mentions talking about don't get excited about 5-2 because you guys are still in second place. That's the difference right there, and there's a chance for Detroit to make that right. 0.036. To call that razor thin is probably an overstatement. We'll see all you cheeseheads come November. Now, let's take a look at the Lions PR feed for the numbers they think told the game. They're pretty good at this whole number thing and knowing about what kind of history was made. We've got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs both producing touchdowns in the same game 18 times. That's a new franchise record, passing the previous mark of 17 from Barry Sanders. Herman Moore, a couple of heroes from when I was not nearly as gray-haired. Amongst all NFL players this season, Lions edge Aiden Hutchinson ranks first in total pressures, first in quarterback hurries, first in strip sacks. He's tied for first in forced fumbles, and tied for fourth in sacks. Those are all pretty solid numbers. Among NFL teams through Week 7, the Lions defense ranks first in forced fumbles, second in passes defended, third in sacks, sixth in INTs. The only NFL players to average 10.9 yards per touch and log 2 rushing TDs in a game. Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry, Frank Gore, Chris Johnson, Adrian Peterson, Corey Dillon. That takes us through the year 2000. Then there's a bunch of people from the 1970s and 1960s. My man's getting in rarer and rarer air. For the first time since fumble data became available in 1999, the Lions have produced 2 sacks and forced a fumble in 6 straight games. And since tackle data began being tracked in 1999, the Lions linebacker Jack Campbell is Detroit's first player to log at least 7 tackles in each of his first 7 games of season. Jared Goff improved to 9-2 in Monday Night Football starts. That includes 5-1 as a Lion. The Lions have now won 5 straight in Monday Night Football. And Dan Campbell improved to 13-3 in prime time games. All of those super fun, super neat numbers to consider as the Lions continue to tear their way through the 2025 season. It seems like years ago that the only conversation that was happening about the Lions was whether or not they could find a way to play football without Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? It's been 7 weeks. You learn a lot, and life comes at you fast in the NFL. So far, so good for these Lions. It's been a ton of fun. Also want to touch on the fact that comparison is the thief of joy. And this came from some of the conversation in the postgame show and in the feed with the comments during the live stream of the postgame show with Chris and I. Some of it comes from the Slack channel as well. And if you haven't, it's $5 a month. It gets you into the Slack. It's some of the smartest conversation you're going to have with fans. And it's a beautiful harbor in the storm from the open sewer that is a lot of social media. It's an open sewer that I've seen up close after that Kansas City game when all those Chiefs fans invaded my feed. You can get out of it, and you can just talk ball with other like-minded Lions fans. If you join the Slack, like I said, it's $5 a month. I'm in there a lot, and one of the conversations that has come up is about John Morton and his play calling and what is he doing. These are some more numbers. I wanted to look this up. The Lions currently are 9th in yards per game. Last year, they were 2nd. They are 13th in pass yards per game. Last year, they were 2nd. They're 5th in rush yards per game. Last year, they were 6th. And they're 3rd in points per game, the one that matters. And last year, they were 1st. So a little down in everything but rush yards per game. And there seems to be some growing frustration with the way that the offense is being called. I said this again in the Slack, and I want to say it out loud here. If Ben Johnson were still at the helm and still calling plays for the Lions, but he was doing it without Kevin Zeitler and without Frank Ragnow, and with a true rookie at right guard, and for all intents and purposes, a rookie at left guard, and Taylor Decker had been in and out of the lineup and was obviously still dealing with an injury. If he were dealt all of that, along with Graham Glasgow doing everything that he can at this stage in his career at center, I don't think the offense would be where it was last year either. You're talking about a guy, at least in Ragnow, who was on his way to a gold jacket, had the injuries not shortened his career. I mean, he was playing at an all-pro level and playing through some incredible pain. But this offense isn't different just because John Morton is a different play caller. This offense is different because there are different pieces in it. And that offensive line has played valiantly, but to say that they're on the same level as the Lions were a year ago, I think is foolish. They're just not. It has to be something they're building towards. And for me, it is one of the biggest questions for this Lions team as they progress through November and December is what is the best case scenario for this unit made of these players this year? I think there are probably more changes on down the road, but that's a conversation for months from now. What can these 5 guys do this year? What can you expect for growth from a rookie like Ratledge? How good can he be when it matters? Because by the time January rolls around, he's not really a rookie anymore. By the time January rolls around, Christian Mahogany won't be a rookie anymore with only a handful of starts to his name. They are improving every single week. They are learning, and it is a steep, steep curve for these guys at that point. But they're less than half the way there. So they're going to be better. How good can Taylor Decker be health-wise? How much healing can he do? He had the 2 weeks off. I was a little surprised. They didn't give him the Bucs game, considering that they could have added a free week and made it an entire month off. But obviously, if he felt he could go, he gives them the best chance of anybody in that room, and it's not particularly close. But how healthy can he be? I don't think that the comparison to the offense from a year ago is entirely fair, based solely on production and numbers. All of the production and numbers, by the way, are solid. by most metrics, it's still a top 10 offense. Not a lot to sneeze at. There are plenty of teams and plenty of fan bases that would love themselves some Lions offense if they could put it in their own uniforms. But with this unit, I don't know what else you could expect no matter who was calling the plays. So I'm a little slower to jump on the bandwagon that John Morton needs to change things, or in the case of the criticism that came through during the postgame show, that he needs to be stripped of play calling duties and forced onto the sideline. I don't think I don't think that helps anybody. The offensive line is the key to making this whole thing go, and the whatever degree or whatever amount they can improve is going to dictate every single thing that this offense accomplishes, along with Jared Goff, because he still continues this crazy efficient quarterback play, even on a night like he had against the Bucs, which was not his best. He was the first one to say it, that the offense left things on the table and they definitely didn't play to their standard. But he sits in the league at second in completion percentage. I believe he's fourth in QBR, ninth in QBR, and third in quarterback rating. So he is just playing an incredibly high level. He is going to be a key to this offense moving forward. His ability to manage the game. He had a handful of key calls, and you always know it at the home games because you can hear it so clearly, where he kills something at the line because he sees a favorable coverage, changes the play, and puts the Lions in the best position possible to succeed. And so as long as he is playing at that level and this offense can continue to play at whatever their version of optimum performance is, this offense is going to be okay. I'm not laying it at John Morton's feet what's going on right now. I think there are some other things that are personnel-based and experience-based that tell the story of where this offense is compared to where it was a year ago. Comparison is the thief of joy. Don't let last year's offense thieve you of your joy this year. And that brings me to the best news, and that is that reinforcements are on the way. By my rough count, and just off the top of my head, making a quick list, Terrion Arnold, Maddox, Davenport, Brian Branch, DJ Reed, Josh Paschal, Rodrigo, Gio Manu, Kirby, right? All of those guys, none of them played last night. They're all going to be back in the lineup at some point. Maybe even Ahmed Hassanin. I don't know. I saw a video of him rehabbing. He was the guy I decided in training camp that I was going to be unusually invested in the success of. I always pick some late round draft pick or UDFA that I decide, like, if this guy doesn't succeed, my life is going to be incomplete. And it was Hassanin. I just like the cut of that guy's jib. He's in the gym. He's working out. He's doing full barbell Bulgarian split squats. Stuff made my legs hurt. All of those guys are coming back. And the depth has already been established beneath them. We saw it last night with the Legion of Whom and all of those guys in the secondary that nobody could pull out of a police lineup that went out there and played out of their minds. And now you get all of these starters back in the weeks to come following the bye week, hopefully with some rest, healed up. This coaching staff has been very careful to make sure that they don't rush anybody and that they're smart with these injuries and they don't put guys on the field when they can go out there and hurt themselves. And that, as much as anything, is a credit to Dan Campbell, having his guys ready to go and making sure that everybody on that coaching staff is preparing all of those guys as though they are going to play and play at the highest level and be a part of this squad. I know he preaches it and it sounds like coach speak because it's so repetitive, but the next man up thing isn't just fluff. It's a mantra that these guys live by, and that's a credit to him. I mentioned this in an earlier edition of the Gray Area some weeks ago. One of the things that we have learned with all of the changes that happened in the offseason and the way that the Lions have come out to start this year is that the culture is established. The culture is established, the standard is established, and it all operates around Dan Campbell. Every single bit of it operates around the head man. He has set the standard. He has established all of those guidelines by which the coaches and the players conduct themselves, and it's a credit to him. that these guys can go out and play at the level they do, and these players are ready to go, and their heads are on fire, and all of the things that you hear people say about a Dan Campbell coach team keep showing themselves regardless of the names on the backs of the jerseys. And the names on the backs of the jerseys are about to improve in number and in quality. You're getting great play out of a lot of guys on that defensive side of the ball that were never supposed to be on the field. What happens when it's the first-round draft picks and it's the premier free agents and it's all the guys you signed to all of the extensions, and they're rested and they're ready to go and they're focused. This team needs to be playing its best headed into January, not headed into Halloween. I think we all learned that lesson last year with the way that they set the world on fire offensively but went into the postseason one-legged. You go in like that and you get exposed at some point because you're only playing the best of the best once you get to the playoffs. The Lions have got to be playing their best ball with their best players at their peak efficiency at the end of the year. Dan Campbell has said over and over again, I want a team that's hardened. I want a team that's scarred. When the playoffs start and the tournament begins, I want my guys to be battle experienced. And so it's better to be hanging on through games now than it is hanging on through games at the end of the season and needing to have one half of your team, like in last year's example, the offense, to be perfect. The offense had to be bulletproof and airtight, and they were able to do that for a good chunk of the year. But you can't necessarily count on that through to a championship. The reinforcements are coming at an excellent time, and this team is building on a much better trajectory than it was this time last year. All of that brings us to the cleansing breath that is the bye week. Finally get a break from the intensity of the season. The players get a break from being in a 3.5-hour car crash every single Sunday or Monday or Thursday. Can we just get, please? All right, no. Last week I know I put in this plea for the silver pants, and I'm still waiting for the silver pants. We've had blueberries, we've had marshmallows, we've had the All Blacks. Can we get the blue jersey with the silver pants, please? And at 1 p.m. Eastern time. All right, any chance? I used to think that it must be so cool to have your team play in primetime because the teams that play in primetime are really good, and the ones that play in primetime a lot are really, really good. And now the Lions are really, really good, and they play in primetime a lot, and it sucks, and I hate it. I want my Sunday afternoon game. I want to be able to process everything and get it out of my system while the sun's still shining. And I don't want to have to wait because I'm impatient and I'm a bit of a spoiled brat. But we have all arrived at the bye week. I can take a breath. They can take a breath. You can take a breath. Going to do another one of these. I will do a bye week edition of the Gray Area. Please hit me in the comments below. Let me know what you want to talk about for the bye. I've got some ideas. I stayed away from some of them this week just because I wanted to kind of focus mostly on the Bucs game and what's going on right now before we look too far into the future. There's going to be time for that, and that time will be a week from now. So if you've got ideas about that, please hit me up in the comments. You can also hit me on all the socials at the Michael Gray, the Michael Grey, and that's all of them. Twitter, Instagram. You want to see the stupid things I'm doing? Bluesky, Facebook, all of it. Please feel free. My DMs are open. Unfortunately, when they play the Chiefs, my DMs are open. They were full of horrible things. At any rate, yeah, let me know what you want to talk about. Enjoy this week. I don't know. Maybe watch some other NFC North teams lose. That'd be fun. Just sit back, guilt-free, pour yourself a cold one, and see what goes on in the NFL without any dogs in that hunt. Just get to take a breath, let this team get healthy, and get really, really excited for what's going to be I try not to get carried away with hyperbole, but it really looks like a special kind of a year shaping up for these Lions as they get ready to head into November and December. So fingers crossed, don't have to worry about it for another week and a half, and I'm going to do that. Like, subscribe, do all the things with the channel, and I'll see you next week.